Question for you. What is common sense? Do you have common sense? How much do you have? If you disagree with someone, is it because they lack common sense? Or is common sense some illusory thing that no one really has, but everyone thinks they have? That's what we'll be discussing this week on Philosophy Friday. Hey philosophers, I'm Jonas. Welcome to Philosophy Friday, a place where we tackle big questions every week. Be sure to check out the question for next week so you can be part of the conversation. Today's question: how do you define common sense, and how much do you have? We all know what common sense is, right? It's a sense that's common or something. We certainly act like everyone should know what it is. When we're frustrated with someone's actions, we say they're not using common sense. Or maybe when we're arguing with someone over how a task is to be done, we say it's just common sense. But what is it? I was curious to know what our future AI overlords had to say on this topic. ChatGPT defined common sense thus: at its core, common sense is often defined as the practical judgment that most people use in everyday situations. It's the ability to make sound judgments without overthinking, especially when it's something that just seems obvious. Well, if overthinking disqualifies someone's action as common sense, then I've got almost none. But something that takes very little thought and is absolutely common sense is hitting that subscribe button. It might just be the most important thing you do all day. So here's the thing. Common sense isn't as simple as it sounds. What seems obvious to you might be totally lost on someone else. Have you ever disagreed with someone over how to load the dishwasher? What about if pineapple belongs on pizza? And then there's I before E except after C and in words like neighbor and... You know what? No. There's no common sense when it comes to spelling in the English language. To further our confusion, is common sense different depending on what part of the world you're in? Does that make sense? Can someone make sense of common sense? The Philosophy Friday community has common sense, so let's turn to them for their thoughts. Crazy to Sew writes on Threads, I think common sense is having the ability to figure out basic everyday issues. Nothing esoteric, just the normal stuff. In some areas I have pretty good sense, but I really have none when it comes to having foresight. Devin Baldwin writes, common sense is like a disease. If you have it, you know. But what if it's just allergies? Hopefully I don't butcher this. XZenoR defines common sense as acts or knowledge that the majority of the population knows or does. They go on to say, technically most people should know common sense, but common sense can stretch to many subjects or things in life, and is therefore difficult for everyone to have. The phrase can be useful, but can vary place to place or group to group, like tipping culture in the USA versus Europe. Josh Ray says, I think common sense are things that most people are generally able to understand or figure out for themselves. I think everyone has it to some degree, but not for everything. I also think that society has been moving towards not needing common sense as much. For example, to keep people safe. I'm guessing an example of this would be to not use your hairdryer in the shower, since there are safety features built into our bathrooms. That said, don't try it. Josh goes on to say, I think generally I have good common sense, like 7 or 8 out of 10. But that really depends on the subject. For safety-related things like not putting myself at risk, I'd say it's super high, where other things, like social situations, I'd probably be a lot lower. Interesting that you rank yourself differently based on the situation. Cindy Baldwin writes, my definition of common sense is sort of basic level intelligence for adult functioning. Things that are a combo of education and intuition. Don't text while driving. If you have a question, Google or go to the library. Don't eat meat if it's been out all day. Pay your taxes, etc. Thank you all for your comments. So what do I think? First, a little backstory. I thought of this question a few months ago when I was at jury duty selection, and one of the attorneys asked how each of us would rank our common sense. I was honestly shocked that some people felt their common sense was low. So, at first, when I was thinking about this, I was pretty analytical about the definition and said, if more than 80% of a community would agree on something, then it's common sense. Basically, it's sense that's common. But the more I thought about it and discussed it, the more I realized that it was much harder to find than simply looking at the definitions of the words we use in the phrase. Common sense should be something that most people understand. Things that we learn when we were kids, things that almost everyone just knows. Then I read this comment, which I saved for last because honestly is better than my take. From Ann T. I actually really hate this term because it's often wielded as a way to silence people with different knowledges. I feel like it's very dominant culture specific. Before reading that, I never really thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. The phrase common sense is often weaponized and used to belittle. It's so true that some people grasp things more quickly than others, and so what might seem obvious to one person is far from obvious to another. And I really like how Anne points out that due to the fact that some people have different backgrounds, and therefore they know different things than we do, that common sense is something that a lot of people claim, but few people actually have. We're all different. We all have skills or knowledge that other people lack. And so just because one group of people think something is obvious doesn't mean that it is to everyone. Thank you for your comment. So what do you think? What is common sense? How much do you have? Should we stop using the term because it lacks any real meaning? Answer in the comments. Thanks for watching, and keep questioning. If you want to support Philosophy Friday, the best thing you can do is to watch and answer next week's question on screen now. You can also submit your own question in the comments or at questions@philosophyfriday.com.